Hello and welcome to episode 1366 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, January 17th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by some loser who roots for the Washington Commanders. Go Lions. What is up, Justin?
Oh man, I can't wait for the game tomorrow. But yeah, I mean we're gonna get crushed. Though I saw a bunch of people picking the Rams over the Eagles, which is like just in my head because you know what the worst possible outcome for like almost everybody would be like the Rams versus the Commanders. Like that would be.
Oh my God. Could you
Like
imagine?
I would love it as a Commanders fan, but everybody else like.
I mean, here's the one thing. It would be a third matchup of a divisional game, so you want to think it could be dope. Or no, excuse me. If the Rams, they would kick out the Eagles. That's right. Yeah, no, that'd be a nightmare.
Yeah,
that'd be a nightmare. Again, you'd love it. Jason would love it.
Yeah.
Commie fans would love it. Rams fans would think they have a better shot too. Of course, both y'all would be saying, "Hey, this is great. We're gonna beat them." But yeah, the general public maybe not such a fan of it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. So, I mean, that's what I'm rooting for. But yeah, I mean,
I feel good about my boys. I'm very excited. We talked a bit about it on Monday, and we'll be talking about it on Sunday once everything is settled. But we got more first basemen to talk about, so let's dive right in. We got a couple more tiers left. The something to prove tier and the power only tier, where you're really just getting that, all or nothing kind of power. And then anybody else you might want to throw in there. Let's start with the something to prove category, because I think this is a really intriguing group. Somebody in here will break out, maybe even multiple somebodies. Who? That is the big question. And if you can figure that out, you're probably going to find yourself a gem, at least at corner, if not first base. And I know they're both positions, but I always kind of rank it where like the first base is my better guy and the corner is usually kind of my second best guy over there. So let's see how you feel about these guys. Isaac Paredes, Ryan Mountcastle, Andrew Vaughn, Mike Toglia, Nathaniel Lowe, Jeimer Candelario, Spencer Torkelson, and Jonathan Aranda. Let's start with Paredes, who obviously got traded to the Cubs mid-season last year, and neither of them, he was traded for Christopher Morel, neither of them really, made the other team feel great about the trade. I think Morel ended up hitting 2 homers in the first 2 games, and those were his only 2 homers as a Ray. Meanwhile, Paredes had an 82 OPS plus, down 55 points from what he had done with the Rays. So was it just, small sample that is isolated since he was traded, and so we notice it more, and the 112 OPS plus that Paredes put up last year with 19 homers is fine, even though it is a big drop-off from 31 homers the year before? Or do you see something here that gives you concern with that Cubs performance that makes you think Paredes is in some trouble here going forward after the huge breakout in 2023? What do you think?
I think this is kind of a perfect fit for Paredes going to Houston with those Crawford boxes. I just
thank you for pointing that out. I was still operating as though he was a Cub. I'm a goofus. Thank you.
Yeah, like I mean, it's the perfect park for him. I mean, you look at like where he hits his home runs, and they're all in the spot right there where those Crawford boxes are. So, and if you go and look over on Savant to his expected home runs by park, he would have had 26 home runs if he played all his games in well, I don't know, it's not Minute Maid anymore, but
it's Daikon now, an air conditioning company. But
you'll be shameless promotion park.
Yeah, you'll be forgiven for Minute Maid for a little bit, considering the name changed 9 minutes ago.
I mean, I still call the Giant Stadium AT&T. So
yeah, we're still on Pac Bell on San Francisco, so you got some time to catch up on Houston. But no, that is huge. Again, I had blanked that he got traded again. Paredes did, and that is a great park for him. I really think he can do a good Alex Bregman imitation there, only with the power. He doesn't have the same profile as Bregman with the walks and all that, but in terms of just running to those Crawford boxes for your bombs. Remember, in Tampa Bay, they also have this little weird jut out in the wall out there in left field where it dips down a bunch, and I wonder how many of his homers took advantage of that too. He's a pure pull guy, and I do think Daikon Field is a great spot for him. So yeah, I'm actually more intrigued by him than I was at the beginning of this segment because, like I said, I was operating as though he was still a Cub. I think it's a good fit for Paredes to push back at least into the 20s. Now he only missed the 20s by 1 homer with 19, but after 31 last year, you said 26 is what he would have had with his batted ball distribution if he played all of his games in Houston. He still won't do that this year. It'll still only be half, but I like him for a mid-20s power output here, Isaac Paredes.
Yeah, I have him, I think, for 23 home runs. Let's see. Oh no, I have him for 26 home runs.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's a totally fair projection.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a pretty darn good lineup, even with losing Kyle Tucker. It's still got Jordan, it's still got Altuve and Christian Walker added to it. Like this is
Diaz, Jeremy Pena. Like this, not bad. The bottom third is tough. Chas McCormick, Taylor Trammell, and Jake Myers. They need an outfielder, at least one.
I feel like they're going to add one, right? Like,
they gotta, right? They gotta figure out something. Are there any good free agent ones left? I know we're getting lighter.
I mean, Santander. I don't think they're going to be in on one of that caliber.
Could you imagine what he could do in that park, though?
He would love that park.
I know only half of his plate appearances would come. Well, not even half, but he's a switch hitter, so he bat left a lot of the times. But it's not like you can't hit lefty homers in Houston. You definitely can.
Could Jerks and Profar be a fit?
Ooh.
I mean, he did what he started his career. Oh, I know that was the Rangers.
He started his career in Texas, so in the state, sure, but that's interesting. I think he and Santander, Profar and Santander, are the really interesting ones. I've always been a Harrison Bader guy, but that's not going to.
Randall Grichuk, he's a righty bat that could play all three positions. That might not be a bad guy to pick up as
at the very least as a fourth out. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they're going to do something. I wonder if they might have a trade in the offing too, because this is an uninspiring outfield.
Yeah.
Even having some like for Chas McCormick and Jake Myers, I still can't get there.
You know who I'm going to guess? This is my prediction. Austin Hayes.
Oh, Austin Hayes makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that, like, if he can stay healthy, there's still a lot of intrigue with him. Not to like break out to some crazy level, but that's a solid player. I liked him in Baltimore. Then he went to Philly this year.
That feels like an Astro. They don't have to spend a lot, but they could get some production from him at worst. They short side platoon him. But
any lefty hitting outfielders that you can think of off your from free agency, because they have a lot of right-handers.
Yeah,
and so I wonder if they're going to be looking for somebody to platoon. Like, Verdugo hasn't signed yet.
Gavin Sheets.
Dylan Carlson's a switch hitter. Gavin Sheets is a pure lefty. Maybe
David
you bring
Peralta.
Pet Peralta, yeah. So they're probably going to go light with it, let's be honest, unless they make a trade or go big on Santander. But the way they're cutting money, they traded Tucker. They're not going to re-sign Bregman. It doesn't look like. I doubt they go for Santander. Not that he's like a mega contract, but he's also not going to be cheap. He should be like a 4-year guy for like about 100, right? Something like that. So anyway, we like Paredes. We think Houston's a great fit. And his price point, by the way, I should point that out since we're doing this here, and he's also qualified for first base in leagues that have lower qualifications. I should have said that at the outset. I apologize. We do cast a wide net here. So if you're in the standard 20-game situation, we try to make it a point to point out when those guys aren't eligible. But he did play 17 games, so he's close, and he will have eligibility at first base in some leagues there, Isaac Paredes. So keep that in mind. And he goes at pick 213. I got 0 issues with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
No problems at all. All right, let's talk Ryan Mountcastle, who is still out in Baltimore, and they're moving the fences back in. And I wonder if they called him first. Like literally the very first call after they finished signing the contractors to do the work. They're like, yo, Ryan, we're moving it back in, brother. Sorry about that. That was really mean for us to do to you. But man, he was like, even though he's not like the best player on that team or some superstar, he was who everyone kind of like pointed to when they moved that fence out, because he hit 33 homers in 2021 and now 22, 18, 13 the last 3 years. Where does he go from here? And the wall isn't coming all the way back in, but it is moving back in.
He is probably the person who benefits the most. Like I went and looked at his spray charts, and I was writing about him last night because he was the biggest gainer out of the first base position in terms of ADP over the course of the beginning of this kind of first part of draft season. So,
and you would attribute it all to the fence.
Yeah, I think a lot of. I mean, part of it is just like he definitely had a little bit of bad luck in terms of where the homers fell and stuff like that. But yeah, the move back in, I think, benefits him more than anybody else. So Mountcastle is a guy who he doesn't have prodigious power. He makes a good amount of contact in the zone. He's got some power, but like he can really get eaten up by parks. And I think the deader ball this last year really hurt him. And so the fact they're moving the walls back in, we don't know if we're going to get a live clear ball or if they're going to be using the same ball kind of as last year. But anything can benefit him at this point. I don't expect him to go back to 33 home runs, but I do expect him to be a mid-20s guy again, depending on how much they move these park dimensions back in. We got to remember, they're not moving them right back into where they were before. Yeah, it's going to be in the middle somewhere, and it's probably not going to be like a straight line either. So
right.
We're gonna have to kind of wait and see what they release in terms of, hey, this is what they look like, and then go to smarter guys than us and go, hey, how's that going to affect them?
And we're not zipping him back up to 33 homers for Mountcastle, but a return to the 20s could make some sense. And I did say like that ADP move is probably all the wall. A little bit of that was tongue in cheek. I think the playing time path being cleared up a little bit, right? Yep. Santander almost certainly not being re-signed because they don't want to spend money, apparently. Christian Walker off the board if there was any concern of a reunion there. Like, Bellinger's gone if they thought maybe, any major roadblocks that you could have seen don't appear to be headed to Baltimore or available to Baltimore anymore. So it looks like it's Mountcastle's job, unless they get Pete. But I'd be really surprised if they talk about not spending money, they don't sign Burns, and then they turn around and sign Pete Alonso. Like that would just be so counterintuitive. Yeah. So I do feel comfortable saying they are not going to sign him. So I do think
the only roadblock would be Kobe Mayo moving to first. Like, but I think they're going to at least start Kobe Mayo off at third in the minor leagues. And then Mayo will be up probably early if he doesn't break camp with the team. But I think they're going to keep Mayo at third for at least for right now.
And Kjerstad could also push a little bit there at first. We have him as outfield first base. Now, he hasn't played first base in the majors, but Jason Martinez has him on roster resource as OB/1 or OF.
I think he's more OF/DH. Like
that's think totally fair.
I think,
but then O'Hearn could take some first. Like the bottom line is, there's a couple lefties between Kjerstad, Mayo, and O'Hearn. Wait, is Mayo righty or lefty?
Mayo's a lefty, I believe, but I'll double check.
No, he isn't right. He is a righty.
Oh, right.
So the two lefties that could, take some platoon plate appearances from Mountcastle are Kjerstad and O'Hearn. But I think he gets a shot at least 450 if he's healthy.
Yeah, I did too.
And I'm okay with that. So, yeah, I think he's fine. He's picked 247. That's not terribly expensive. I'd be okay taking a shot on Mountcastle. I'm not like
the question is, like, if he starts moving up even more,
then I'm going to probably pause it a little bit. I think I want him in this early to mid 200s range. If it starts coming up around like the Goldschmidt range, who's at 190 during this time period, no, I don't think so. We talked how much we like Goldschmidt. I think I'd go with him. Then you're talking about Michael Toglia as the next guy up, who we're actually going to talk about in this tier. And in fact, let's go to him now. We'll skip Andrew Vaughn. We'll come back to him. Toglia's at 181. If Mountcastle got up that high, right, because you said he's one of the guys rocketing up the board, where would you be between those two? Do you like Toglia at all?
I like Toglia a lot. So I would not be in on Mountcastle over Toglia. But Tolia's a big riser too. Like he is. He's the guy who I wrote about last night in that article that's up on Fangraphs right now. There's a ton of upside in Toglia. Toglia is a guy, like, he had 25 home runs. He stole 11 bases in just 458 plate appearances. That was 116 games. I fully expect him to get a full kind of slate of plate appearances.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he did hit 218, but part of that was a little bit of bad luck. which somebody actually pointed out to me in the comments, that his home BABIP was fairly low last year. Sorry, his home average was pretty low last year, 235, and his away batting average, which we kind of expect to be lower, because of people struggling going between Colorado and regular kind of air,
right.
Was he had a BABIP of
207.
207 on the road, which is really, really low. So
and like you said, didn't get the goodness at home of a 333 BABIP translating into a 235 batting average for Toglia.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
he's not like a free swinger. I think some people think of like Toglia as this guy who hey, he can't make contact. He had an 84% zone contact last year, and he did have a 50% swing strike rate.
I was gonna say, does he chase a lot then?
I think he chases a little bit too much at times, but he's
O swing 26%.
Yeah, his O swing isn't that. Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. I think. Oh, sorry, his zone contact was 81%, so it was a little bit lower.
Okay.
He walks at a 12% rate. He's got power. He's got speed. He's going to be playing, I think, every day in Colorado. I'd be really, really surprised if he didn't, but it's Colorado, so you never really know what the Rockies are going to do.
True. Expect the dumbest thing.
I think Toglia is one of these guys that could have a massive season. I also think that there is a pretty big whiff rate in terms of whether or not he's going to succeed. So not necessarily in terms of, though he does have a big strikeout rate. He is a 30% strikeout rate guy. But the Rockies are built like this. This is how the Rockies are built. I don't think they're going to I don't think it's gonna be oh, Michael Toglia is struggling, we're gonna send him down. I think it's gonna be hey, this is the team we got and we're rolling with it. So he's a young first baseman. I think he's one of my favorites out of this tier, just because the upside is so huge, especially if you're getting him as your CI, and you're kind of just pairing him with maybe a little bit more stable of an option up top. So I really like Toglia. Like I said, I think he is my favorite of this tier right here.
I think I'm totally okay with that. You get Colorado guys, obviously that's a tried and true fantasy method. Even with some of those struggles with the BABIP and the ugly batting average at 218, like you mentioned earlier, he went 25-10. And I think this is one of those risers where people are just doing their studies and starting to see, oh, this guy in Colorado did because I don't think there's been any move that they've done that would make people more interested. So I really think this is a natural sort of winter helium type of guy where people are starting to take notice of Michael Toglia, and that's why he's zipped up to pick 181 right now. Now there's a big gap between Steer and Toglia at 120 and 180. No other first baseman go in between there. Do you think Toglia continues to close that? He and Goldie, do you think they continue to close that gap, move into the 140s, 150s? And what is your breaking point on Toglia?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he's going to continue to rise because people just love these kind of Colorado upside plays. So
how can you not?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with it, right? Will he get up? I think he could get up into the 150s. I'd be fine with that. I think when you start getting him up into the next tier of first baseman in the 120s, then I'd have a problem. I'd have a really, really big problem. But Toglia and Goldschmidt are both risers right now. I think Toglia will continue to rise and Goldschmidt will kind of sit where he's kind of at.
Yeah.
But I'm okay as long as it doesn't get too crazy. If I have to start taking Michael Toglia in the 8th round, I'm not gonna have it.
No, because as you highlighted, there's still some swing and miss that the average isn't necessarily going to come all the way up. We expect a better batting average at home, but could still be rough on the road, so you could still be in the 230s, and that would be a 30-point improvement, right? So that could be that would be a 12-point improvement. He hit 218. It was 202 on the road though.
His XBA was 244. I feel like that's right.
I got no problems with that. You're talking 244 with 30 and 12 capability on the homer and SBs. I'm all for that with Toglia. So I'm with you. I like him too. We mentioned Andrew Vaughn briefly on Monday's show, in that there's like a, indirect family tie there where Danielle works with a family member of his, if I have that right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. His
So,
father. And he went to the high school that my kid's going to right now.
that's fantastic. So as a family, y'all have been kind of rooting for him out there,
Mhm.
Cal Bear. And I've always had an affinity for him from falling in love with him during draft prep that year. I really wanted the
Mhm.
Tigers to get him. They ended up obviously getting jumped by the White Sox. They took him, and we got quote unquote stuck with Riley Green. Definitely not upset with how that's turned out, because the simple fact is Andrew Vaughn has not really panned out as a number 3 overall pick. Now, he's been kind of a league average guy for 4 seasons. You can get a lot worse from a top 3 pick. So I don't want to say he's like stone cold, worthless bust, but he's been pretty underwhelming. Is there more, or is this just who 27-year-old Andrew Vaughn is? Which is to say, again, like a 100 to 110 OPS plus, 20 some homers, ho hum, blah. Like, where we at on Vaughn, personal interest in him aside?
It's so interesting because the underlying numbers say, like, hey, he should be better than this. And like you
Mm
look at what Vaughn did last year, he had 112 max exit velocity, good, a 16.6-degree launch angle, good, mediocre hard hit percentage of 43%, but put the ball in the air a good amount, 46% of the time, makes a ton of in zone contact, 91% for a guy who's supposed to be a quote unquote power hitter. I'm very tempted. At the same time, like I'm also like very wary that he's had some like health issues, that he's
hmm.
dealt with some back stuff, that he's kind of just always underperformed where we thought he would be. But I have a little bit of a just I don't know, I guess it's just a feeling that like, hey, maybe this is finally the year it all kind of comes together. And the price is fairly good uh on him at 291. Like that feels like a really good gamble on a
He's
guy
priced to
that,
buy.
like, at worst I think he's going to be like what he's kind of been the last few years. Like, a guy who's, high teens, low 20s home runs with a halfway decent average. And if everything came together, like I could see like a 27, 28 homer, 260, 270 kind of season from a guy like Vaughn. Now he's on the White Sox, which
Sure.
means the runs and RBIs are not going to be there because that team is just atrocious. Now I could
They're
see
still
them move
bad.
him, but at some point, especially if he starts out really hot. But um, I have, especially for deeper leagues, I think your 10s and 12s there just isn't enough to really go for on Vaughn.
Yeah.
And there are guys that we're going to talk about here a little bit later that have like infinite upside in some ways. But I like Vaughn in 15s because he's going to play every single day. Like he's gonna, as long as Andrew Vaughn is healthy, he's gonna hit 600 plus plate appearances,
Right.
and you're gonna kind of accumulate that way. The problem is with accumulators, you usually like them to be on a little bit better team because
Right, because he gets like 400, 450 plate appearance worth of runs and ribbies because he's on such a rotten team.
yeah.
So he needs the 600 plate appearances just to get to those modest outputs
Hmm.
through little fault of his own, some fault of his own, because he hasn't been an amazing player. But yeah, I think there is some upside. I do wonder, because I've talked about how much I like this farm system. I do wonder if like he could have a summer surge too,
Yeah.
where they start calling up prospects left and right in June, July, and August to supplement that team, and then all of a sudden he puts up a 90 to 100 ribby pace in the second half only. But we'll see. He has to
Yeah.
perform, and then they also have to call up the guys around him. But Andrew Vaughn, I like him as a DC play because of that damn near
Yep.
locked volume. It's boring. Nobody's going to be cursing you in the chat for taking him, but you got a guy that you can put at first base or corner pretty consistently. So that's
Yeah.
where we're at on Andrew Vaughn. We'll talk about him more in the spring if we see some things that suggest that maybe the breakout is imminent. Let's talk Nathaniel Lowe, because he does belong here in the something to prove category. Because while he hasn't been bad, he certainly hasn't lived up to the hype after the big 30 plus homer season. What was it?
27.
Excuse me, 27. Excuse me. But 27 is far and away a career high. 18 but the year before, 17 the year after, and 16 last year. So it's sticking out right now as a sore thumb. Also the 300 average. Like, it's a classic breakout best season of his career. Is it going to stay there as the obvious best season, or can he get closer to 2022? Now, before you answer, let me say, nothing wrong with the last 2 years, at least from a real life standpoint. A 120 WRC plus, 17 homers, 260 average, 360 OBP, 400 slug. Like, that's fine. Heading out to the Nats now, where do we go from here with Nathaniel Lowe?
Unless we hear the Nats are changing his swing plane to kind of give him more loft, I just don't think that Nathaniel Lowe is super interesting outside of on-base percentage leagues. If you're in an on-base percentage league, like in a deeper one at that, so like a 15-teamer, an AL only, if you're in those kind of leagues,
NL only now.
Sorry, NL only. Yeah, that's right. He's now on the Nationals. Like, unless you're in an on-base percentage league in a deeper one at that, like, he just doesn't register. 16 home runs. The Nationals park is kind of pretty equal to where he was last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the offense is going to be better necessarily. I mean, it'll be
better than Texas, offense. You mean?
Yes, yeah. Okay. It'll be better than it was last year in Washington, but I don't think it'll be better than Texas is.
That's
so
fair.
Like, I feel like this isn't someone I'm really that interested in. Like, the only way I think he ends up on my team is in Tout Wars, where it's a 15-team on base percentage league, right? And he ended up on my team last year because I got him for $1. And like, if I get him for a couple bucks in Tout Wars, I'll be fine. Like, I'll be happy with that. But in any other format, like, I just don't think there's enough juice here to really warrant the squeeze of the Nathaniel Lowe.
Yeah, I really can't argue with you as the Nathaniel Lowe proponent, and I was able to cash in the 2022 big season, thankfully. Nothing like being on a guy and then missing the big season, but I was able to get that, and I've kind of stuck with him the last couple of years, getting him in a league or two each year. But yeah, it's pretty boring over at first base for Lowe. When you're under 20 homers, modest output on the runs and ribbies because he wasn't a top of the order guy. 260s average, I'm not thumbing my nose at that, but
yeah,
it's boring, man.
Yeah.
And again, DC, where you can take boring and it's fine. I don't really have a problem. But he also, Nathaniel Lowe, is at pick 255, which is 22 picks clear of Vaughn, and I think I'd rather just wait the extra round between those two. Even though I think Lowe's the better player with more bankable numbers on the board, give me the guy who's cheaper between those two. And so, yeah, I can't see a real reason to get super geeked on Lowe right now in anything but the OBP, like you said. So let's move on to our next guy. Jeimer Candelario got a ton to prove. And I liked this move for the Reds. I really did think that, hey, I know we had talked all offseason about how their offense had too many players, and it did turn out that they actually ended up short on players. Remember, we were trying to trade anybody off that team to make sure everybody had a role, and then injuries struck, and they were scrounging for players after a while. Nick Martini was playing like all of the first few weeks. But anyway, Jeimer did not quite pan out, leaving Washington and the Cubs. He had a split season there for Cincinnati. 20 homers. Okay, cool. He had 22 the year before, but 56 ribbies after 70. Part of that was playing time. And that was the big issue, too. He only played 112 games. That's a 4-year low for Jeimer Candelario. But the batting average cratered again. And we've seen such inconsistent batting averages from him the last 4 years for Jeimer Candelario. 271, 217, 251, 225. So where do we go from here for the 31-year-old going into his second year with the Reds? Are you giving him an injury washout? Because I will point out that the 217 was also a 124-game season. So the two ugly batting averages have come in injury hit seasons. Or are you too nervous and you don't want to jump back on the Jeimer train?
I think it's all going to depend on price in draft. Like, if Candelario is going at pick 308, where he's been kind of going since the beginning of December, like, I'm fine with that. Like, that, he's first and third base eligible. He still is going to be in a great park in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
with the contract, I think he's going to be playing every day. At the same time, like, I'm a little worried about what we saw last season. This is a guy who has struggled with health over the course of the last few seasons, so you can't really project him to hit 600 plate appearances. And like the underlying numbers are, took a real dip last year. And if you want to blame that on the injury, totally fine with that. But, his zone contact dropped from 87% down to 82.5%. His O swing jumped up from 29.5% up to 34%. Those are kind of scary numbers in terms of like, hey, are we having a skills degradation from a 31-year-old at this point? So, and he's never, as much as like we've always been like, hey, especially going to Cincinnati, I think you were one of the big proponents of like, hey, look at this park, like he's going to hit bombs. He's never hit more than 22 home runs in a season. Now you could say like, hey, hit 20 in just 463 plate appearances.
Yeah, you got to point out that like the homers were up, but the counter to that, I'll counter myself because I was going to say that if you didn't point it out, the slug actually, or the ISO and slug both went down. It was actually a 204 ISO down from 220 the year before. So yes, the homer pace was better, but I guess he sacrificed some doubles there. And so his overall power output wasn't quite there for Jeimer. So I think all your concerns are pretty fair. That said, I do think most of them are baked into that pick 300. So if he stays there, I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with it at that price, especially if you like in NFBC or in deeper leagues where you're going to be drafting a guy outside of the top 300. Like, or even in like your shallower leagues where, hey, your 12 team leagues, like he's a great guy to put on your bench because he covers 2 spots. Like I love guys who cover multiple spots for you. Prefer when they're like, middle corner or, corner outfield. But first, third, like we're going to talk about third base here probably in a couple weeks. And like third doesn't have great depth either. So a guy like Candelario being put on your bench is great. The problem I have is if I'm going to put Candelario into my everyday lineup, I don't know how much I love that.
Well, I think you could make a quick decision on him too, because you're talking about a shallower league where maybe you draft him as a reserve, maybe you're one of your last picks, and then I'm not saying that you'll know everything in 2-3 weeks, but you can make a quick decision on him. And if he pops off in the summer, you tip your cap and you move on. But like if you don't see what you want out of those first couple weeks in a 12-team league with Candelario, I think you move on. But I do think there are some reasons to give him a little look. Brett Hale does make a great comment here though. Christian Encarnacion-Strand, Noelvi, a little worried about the young dudes returning, cutting into his time. That's not an unfair critique. Right now, we don't have Noelvi on the team. Don't forget, they also brought in Gavin Lux. We got Noelvi in the minors.
They also that's going to be interesting. They also have Reese Hines as well.
That's right. Guy. I forgot about him.
Now, I mean, I see what Brett's saying there. I think Cincinnati is one of those organizations going to let the guy they're paying play, and they have Candelario for 2 more years at $15 million a pop per year. So I think they're going to give Candelario every opportunity as long as he's healthy. But I could see, hey, if Candelario is struggling or if he's banged up, they're going to have a little bit quicker hook on them than maybe they would have last year. But we also don't know, like I said, we don't even have Marte or Hines in the majors in terms of what roster resource thinks. And CS is a guy I talked about in my article for today too. What's CES at this point? Like he got injured in May and never came back. Like we don't have, he's
Frankly,
one of those guys.
I didn't list him and he should have been in this tier. So let's bring him up now. Christian Encarnacion-Strand was a big breakout pick for a lot of folks last year, and I count myself among them. I liked CES. I liked Jeimer. I was all in on the Reds, and it did not work. It was a pretty big flame out. Now, you can give him a pass for the injury. He only played 29 games, but the 29 games we saw were utterly wretched. 33 WRC plus. Now, that's a tiny sample, and I don't want to make too much of it.
And we don't know how much of it he was playing hurt, kind of
so
past the wrist injury.
I am willing to give him the injury washout, but price only dropped to 231. Like, he's not free or anything like that for CES. Are you willing to buy back? How do you feel about him this year?
I really need to see him in spring.
I was actually going to tack on that. I was going to say, or is it a wait and see for spring? Because I think that's where I'm at too with CES.
So I don't have many drafts until spring trainings, which is nice for me this year. But I have at least one, maybe two, that are going to be in February, and I will not draft Christian Encarnacion-Strand in those drafts. He's just going to be off my board because I just don't know what to project him for. He's one of those guys where. So one of the things I do with my projections is I go, all right, like there are certain guys that I don't have a read on or that I'm struggling with. And so I'll fill it in with another projection system's numbers. And CS is one of those guys where I kind of just, I think I threw Steamer in there. And when the Bat X comes out, I'll probably throw a Bat X in there until I can get a better read on him in spring training, because I have zero idea of what CES could be coming off of this wrist injuries. Wrist injuries typically set power, and that is CES's big tool. So I'm worried, and I'm, like I said, I'm not drafting him until March. I need to see him hit a couple bombs in spring training, get confirmation that he's fine before I'm willing to gamble a pick on Christian Encarnacion-Strand right now.
Yeah, I think I co-signed that completely. And like I said, I was a big CES guy last year, and I was hoping to see some improvements. Like his plate skills were pretty bad, 29% K, 6% walk. This is back in 2023 when he had a 63 game sample that whet our appetites for him, because he did hit 13 homers and put up a 111 WRC plus, but those plate skills were bad. And I was like, okay, if we see some improvement there in Cincinnati, he could easily hit 25, 30 homers, and let's see where he goes. Well, again, he didn't do any of that. The wrist injury was terrible, and I need to see something too. So he's a spring draftee for me, if at all. Otherwise, I'm looking elsewhere at first base. But he does have something to prove, even being a young guy with just 92 games under his belt. Speaking of a young guy with something to prove, I mean, he's starting to get a little bit older, right? Spencer Torkelson is not a baby anymore. And not only does he have something to prove, but he's being chased now. The 25-year-old former #1 overall pick is going to be joined by your best friend, Colt Keith. He's going to get first base reps because they brought in Gleyber Torres to play second base, and he knows how to play defense at the very least. Like, that's the one mainstay for Torres, is that his defense is going to be better than Keith's. His bat might not be. Keith broke out in the summer and started to show some of the things that made you and I so excited about him. But where does that leave Torque? Right now, it leaves him on the outside looking in. Where do you stand with him? How do you think that plays out? He's in the minors right now for us, like Noelve. And I say us, I mean roster resource, not me being the Tigers homer that I am. Do you think that's how it goes, where he starts in the minors? Does he start to put some DH work in, and then maybe Carpenter has to get out into the outfield? Where are you at on this Torque situation now that your boy Keith is encroaching on his first base?
Yeah, I think Torkelson starts the year in Toledo.
I don't think that's unfair either, and I love Torque.
I think that the signing of Gleyber and pushing our boy Colt Keith to first base just kind of signed that death warrant. Now, there always could be an injury.
Sure.
Torkelson could come in just looking amazing and kind of force his way onto the roster, and then they'd have to kind of figure out, like,
I think then, sorry to interrupt you there, but I think then you would go, let's say he does that. He comes in, he looks amazing, and he's ripping bombs left and right. I think you go Gleyber to third, Keith back to second, Torque at first, and Jace Young on the outside looking.
I thought you'd put Vierling at third and put Kerry Carpenter back into the outfield.
And then Torque at DH?
Yeah, and Torque at DH. Because not like Torque's a great defender. So,
true.
like,
I think that would also work. I think there are a couple avenues there. It depends how much they want Carp in the outfield. He's not a great outfielder, but do you hide him out there because his bat is amazing? And does Vierling have to play every day? Vierling did a lot for the team last year. I really, like, as somebody who watches them every day, I can tell you the 108 WRC plus won't jump off the page, but I swear to God, every one of that guy's 133 hits were clutch. Obviously, I'm joking, but it seemed like every time Vierling did, like, it was impactful.
He was second on the offense in WAR. Like, he was.
There you go.
He was one of their most valuable players offensively.
And he can play anywhere defensively.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, too. He was a little Swiss Army knife for
which gives him
Hinch.
Which gives him and the Tigers a lot of opportunity to kind of move things around. So, like, I think if Torque does come into spring and he just looks like the guy we've always thought he could be, then I would not be surprised if he's on this roster and playing every day, but he has to show something. And so far in his career, he has really not shown anything. Now, on the plus side for Torque, like some of the underlying skills are good. Like he's got above league average zone contact. He doesn't swing outside of the zone. We know that there's pop in the bat.
Yeah, we saw it in summer 2023.
Yeah, I think part of it is he is, especially last year, I think he was trying to force things over the fence. And like he raised his fly ball percentage over 50%. And I just think he was forcing things. And I don't, he wasn't squaring the ball up. He was trying to lift. A lot of those were like popping out, at the warning track. I think if he comes in and has a better mindset, kind of corrects that swing path a little bit, I think Torkelson could break out. That being said, he's the biggest dropper right now because we don't know that he's going to be on the roster, and we don't think he's going to be on the roster right now. So he's really hard to draft outside of DCs.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, and I've been the biggest Torque fan out there. Torques, stand up. But listen, my fandom has limits. I don't just keep drafting guys forever. I mean, actually, that's not true. I draft Angels pitchers forever. But with Torque, even at the discounted price, I just don't see a lot of reason to jump in right now. I am pretty excited about my Tigers, though. They do have options, like you said. And I didn't even realize Matt Vierling ended up with the second most plate appearances at 567, behind only Riley Green at 584. And I was going to say, you talk about maneuvering guys around. I think even, let's say Torque does do well and they want to start moving things around. I think Hinch is fine with maybe only Riley Green getting 600 plate appearances, and then nobody else necessarily has to. The only reason Green didn't last year was because he got hurt and he only played 137 games. But otherwise, I think, he's not looking for the whole roster to be 600 plate appearance guys. He'll mix and match his pieces. And so,
I think Glaber will, right?
I think you could see Glaber, Green for sure, and then maybe even Keith. Because I think they love, they pre-signed him, right? He got that big deal. Yep. So I think you could see 3 guys push for 600, but that's still 6 spots where they're rotating guys in. So we could see some maneuvering there for Detroit. I know that makes it tougher on fantasy folks with the sporadic playing time, but it makes them a better team overall because they don't have a ton of superstars. So I'll probably take at least one flyer on Torque just because I can't be left out in the cold if he does pop off. But I'm not where I was last year when I was like, yes, the summer 2023 breakout was real. I'm all in on Torque. I'm no longer there right now. Let's go to Tampa Bay. I almost said Tampa Bay. Cool pronunciation. Let's go to Tampa Bay and talk Jonathan Aranda, who's been around for a little while. He's still pretty young, but he's been kind of in the consciousness on the cusp for a while. He's going into his fabled age 27 season, which means he's guaranteed for a breakout. I know I make that joke every time, but it always makes me laugh. He's had sporadic playing time over the last 3 years, just totaling 110 games of league average play. But in the minors, he's been raking. And that's why he's been on our radar and driving some intrigue, including his big breakout in 2023 when he had a 165 WRC plus at AAA. It was down to 111 last year, so not quite as thrilling there as the power. He had a little bit of a power outage. What's next for Aranda? He can't play defense for shit, so he is a true DH. Is that enough? We know Tampa Bay doesn't love to commit to a full-time DH. Is Aranda's bat good enough that he can get some commitment from them?
Probably not. Aranda was one of those guys that I always liked because I was like, hey, I see a lot of contact ability here. I think there's more power than he showed. But he doesn't elevate the ball at all. He had a 35% fly ball percentage in the majors and a 36% in the minors and a 50% ground ball rate in the majors last year. I just don't think there's enough juice to squeeze here, and yes, he's like that. Was it Daniel Murphy? I almost called him David Murphy. He's a Daniel Murphy type player who isn't good enough defensively anywhere, so they kind of put him everywhere.
Right. He is a utility in that they're just trying to hide him so that they can get the bat in. The problem is he doesn't have Daniel Murphy's bat, which you knew you were at least going to get a couple base knocks, and then Murphy started to find some power and actually hit a different level. But yeah, I'm with you there. That's the problem here is that he's a dreadful defender, and the power went out last year a little bit. That if they can't even bank on that, can they really get the PT? That said, I would take a shot in a DC still on Aranda.
Yeah.
And I know that's not saying much. It's a 50-round draft and hold, right? So there's not many guys you wouldn't at least take a flyer on. But I do still kind of like him. Although as I'm looking at it, like I see your boy, Lamont Wade Jr., 140 picks after him. Even Torque is 50 picks after him. Carlos Santana, the venerable Carlos Santana, goes 40 picks after. Josh Bell goes 40 picks after. So maybe I'm not taking Aranda just based on his price versus other guys. So yeah, I think I talked myself out of him.
Like even farther down, like Aranda goes pick 437. Like, how much different is Aranda than Lamont Wade Jr. going to pick 605?
That's what I'm saying. I like Lamont Wade Jr.
Yeah, like I Lamont Wade, like, you want a DC pick. I'm taking Lamont Wade 100 picks later. Like,
yep, especially at that price point. At the same price point, I probably want Wade. You're going to give me 100+ picks difference. So yeah, I think Aranda going to have to show it to me. If I miss the boat on him, I'm okay with that. I was saying earlier about not wanting to miss the boat on Torque if he breaks through. I've been circling Aranda for the last couple years, but if he breaks out on somebody else's team, okay, tip the cap and move on.
Yeah, Brett nailed it. It says a diet version of the powerless Yandees, maybe 0-calorie Yandees.
The dietist version. Yeah, exactly. If the power isn't there for Aranda, then it's really hard to be excited. Maybe you would just pair him with one of these next guys in the power only tier. Pretty straightforward categorization. I probably don't need to explain it, but yeah, you're just getting kind of that empty power. Maybe a spike of big batting average from one of these guys, but it's unlikely. Our boy Michael Bush leads off here, and we'll talk about him after his breakout. Luke Raley, Reese Hoskins, Rowdy Tellez, prospect Jack Caglianone from KC, Ryan O'Hearn, who we briefly spoke about with Ryan Mountcastle, Tyler Soderstrom. They have given up the game on him catching, as they should. He's a dreadful catcher. We always knew that was going to happen, by the way. There's nothing surprising about that, especially with Shea Langoliers being a real catcher. And then Davison De Los Santos. Those are the guys I have for the power only. If you want to add anybody else, that's fine. We'll get through it. But let's start with Bush, because that's a guy that we stayed bought in on for a few years, and it paid off. How do you feel about Michael Bush following up his breakout campaign, which saw him hit 21 homers, 65 ribs, 248, 335, 440. It's a deep league sort of breakout. I'm not pretending like he won everybody their league, but we were big fans of his. We wanted him to get out of LA because there just wasn't going to be the playing time there. He found it with the Cubs and put up a nice 3-WAR season. What's he do from here at age 27 for Bush? Well, besides have a guaranteed breakout.
I feel like there's more power in this bat. Like,
I think
the underlying skills on Bush are pretty good. Good in zone contact. Doesn't swing outside of the zone too much. But we just didn't see like the massive exit velocities that we have seen in brief periods in the minors. I mean, he in 2023 in AAA, like, he had a 111.5 max exit velocity and 91.5% average exit velocity. Like, he hit the ball hard, and we didn't see it as much last year. Now, he's still got 21 home runs, which tells you, hey, like, he knows how to use the power that he's got. But like, I do feel like there is a breakout potential coming, especially with those good, contact skills. And it seems like the Cubs are committed to him. They just traded Matt Mervis this offseason.
Yep.
So I think Bush
Bellinger.
is going to get, they traded Bellinger. I think Bush is going to get full run, and I could see a big breakout. I think at worst we get kind of what we got last year, which is low 20s home runs and kind of a mediocre average. But when you're putting a guy on the bench or putting a guy at CI, like, hey, you want him to have a little bit of upside to kind of improve. And I think Bush is one of those guys who's got that upside.
Yeah, I think there's real 30 homer potential here. Even if it cost him a few average points, if he hit like 235, 330, okay, I'll take that. But yeah, 248, 21, if he just repeated, we live with it, but there is upside for more, and that's what we like. Luke Raley, up and down type of season last year. Actually, I think he started really poorly, and if you cut him, you were justified. And then I think he had a pretty good summer. I'm pulling up the splits right now to kind of take a look at it. Yeah, so 505 April OPS with no homers, and the playing time was minuscule. So if you thought, oh, he just got run out, they're not playing him, and you moved on in shallower leagues, I get it. Maybe even in 15-teamers too, because he wasn't a super high pick. It ended up being too early, but it was one of those like justifiable cuts. The next 2 months he went crazy, mid 800s OPS totals in each, powered by 360 plus BABIPs in both months, 9 homers. Dipped back down in July, 504 OPS again, but then 991 and 970 in the final 2 months. So it was those two ugly months in April and July, and then an absolute stud in the other 4 months for Luke Raley, despite playing for Seattle. So yeah, not everyone's eaten up by T-Mobile Ballpark, it seems. Where do we go from here with Luke Raley out in Seattle?
I mean, Luke Raley is the perfect kind of guy in deeper daily moves leagues, right? Like he's going to platoon, so you need to kind of be able to kind of shift him in and out of your lineup based on where, when he's facing a lefty, because he shouldn't be facing lefties at all.
At all.
But that being said, like he's got a ton of power. Now it comes with a ton of swing and miss. It was a 30% strikeout rate. He is a guy whose zone contact is below that 80% threshold that I really like, but he doesn't swing outside of the zone too much, and he is aggressive in the zone. So I still think that, hey, the batting average is going to be bad. It's probably actually going to be worse than it was last year. He had a 220 XBA, but it will come with bombs. It will come with some stolen bases. So like
sneaky speed.
Yeah, like he stole 11 last year in 455 plate appearances, stole 14 in 406 plate appearances in 2023. Like he's a very flawed player because he can't hit lefties. He's gonna swing and miss a bunch. So there is a lot of risk. But could we see like a 25, 27 homer season from Luke Raley at some point? I think we can, but I think we could also see him becoming a complete bench player if he just is swinging missing too much and the power isn't translating.
Yeah, I think you can get just it's like Bush here. A repeat is totally fine, but you do have a little upside here with Raley. You got downside too. If things, if he gives a little back versus righties, we know he's not going to hit lefties. And things could spiral where he's not getting PT, but he also has the first base outfield, which we like. So there are things to like here with Luke Raley. And pick 310 is not crazy. I think that's fair for somebody who went 22-11. There are some guys later that we do like, and I'll mention Spencer Horwitz from Monday's show, who goes at pick 312 that I think I would still prefer, but I don't hate Raley at 310. I think that's a fair price point. Yeah. Let's talk Rhys Hoskins. Rhys Hoskins went to Milwaukee last year, and I was pretty excited for him. It didn't quite come to fruition. Now, it wasn't terrible, and I missed all of 2023 to injuries, so you got to give him some leeway there. So the fact that he ended up just kind of being league average, 98 OPS plus, it was an ugly 214 average. That's the really tough part. But he still hit 26 homers with 82 ribbies, 59 runs, 3 steals, who cares? But so again, all in all, it was like, okay, it was fine coming off of a completely missed season. But he goes pick 293, ahead of a lot of these guys that we've already talked about, that we've had some interest in. Well, what do we think for year 2 from Hoskins in Milwaukee?
Oh, man. I don't know how much to blame on Hoskins' injury previously, or if this is just, hey, he's kind of getting older. He's dealt with injuries, which can kind of slow down your bat to begin with. Yeah. I'm sure the Brewers weren't super stoked when he exercised his $18 million option for this year, because I'm sure they would have liked to get out from under it. I think
especially a team like that, right? Like they're
that's cheap as hell. Yeah, exactly. I think he kind of is who he is at this point of his career, which is a guy who, hey, like, he's not going to hit for a great average, but there's power. Like, if you need cheap power late and you've got batting average covered, Hoskins is a dude you can go to and kind of pencil in 25 to 28 home runs. You're just going to have to eat a 215 batting average, because I don't think it's coming up. Like his XBA was actually worse than his BA was last year. So like he wasn't unlucky. He was just like, this is kind of who Hoskins is at this point, because he puts the ball so much in the air that, especially with a deader ball, like, they're going to be balls that drop. Now, he's got power that plays. I'm not saying like, hey, he's going to evaporate or anything like that. But like, I don't think we're going to see a 35 or a 40 homer Rhys Hoskins, which I know some people were like itching for. I think we're going to see kind of these mid to high 20s homers, a bad batting average that you're going to have to make up for somewhere else.
Okay. I can't really refute that. The best I can do is say that, maybe it was an injury, not an injury washout, but maybe there were some lingering effects, and maybe he can climb back into the 30s with his homers with a 240-something average. But 214, what he hit last year, that is on the table. I'm with you that that's not necessarily an anomaly. I don't want to get into a correlation versus causation here, so I'm not saying it's directly linked. We've talked about, did the ACL from the previous year impact him? You might say no, based on the fact that he actually started off really strong. He had an 813 OPS through his first 39 games. But then, Justin, Rhys Hoskins had a hamstring injury that cost him 2 weeks. And then when he got back from that, he only had a 681. That's where I don't want to do the automatic causation situation there. But I wonder if that played a bigger role than the ACL. Maybe the hammy was sapping some of his lower half power there. And that's why he wasn't very good when he came back. So I don't know what to make there. But that's where I'm at with Hoskins.
It absolutely could, but we also then have to kind of put in like, hey, this is a guy who's been banged up quite a bit.
Which is what you opened with. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's part of the game.
And he's now going to be 32. Like, this is not a guy who is, in his mid to late 20s anymore. So I think, I mean, my projection on him has him with 500 plate appearances, because I'm just penciling in mid time, 27 home runs and a bad batting average.
Only one of the last 4 seasons has been a full season with 156 games. It was 131 this year, so it wasn't too bad, but then it completely missed 23 and only 107 games in 21 for Rhys Hoskins. So I agree. He is just an injury risk. And again, at pick 293, it's not terrible, but there's just too many guys after him that I'm probably not going to get much Rhys Hoskins.
Yep.
All right. Let's go to Rowdy Tellez. Where is he right now, by the way? Is he
a free agent?
Yeah. Okay, so Rowdy Tellez is out there as a free agent, coming off of a tough year. 691 OPS, actually 2 tough years in a row. Milwaukee in 2023, Pittsburgh last year, sub 700 OPSs in both. I know we'd have to see where he signs, but we're kind of getting pretty removed from that 35 homer campaign in 2022. Do you have any interest in Rowdy Tellez? Is he a, last or very, very late pick for you in DCs? He's picked 707, so you can get him for literal dirt cheap, or are you just not interested in Tellez anymore?
So somebody in one of my chats had kind of asked me a question about putting together a different kind of fantasy game, and I could see Rowdy Tellez playing really well in that, and that's a KBO fantasy game. So I need to see that Tellez signs
well in the KBO. He would crush the KBO.
I need to see Tellez signing a contract in the major leagues before I pick him. He's not on my board right now until I know he's got a job, because I mean, at this point, I don't know that there's a really good shot that Tellez lands anywhere. I
think that's totally fair.
Maybe he gets a minor league deal with an invite to spring training, but even that, I'm not super enthralled by, depending on what team he ends up with.
Because if it doesn't work, you can't cut him in a DC. And that's the main things that we're doing right now. And so, it is a dirt cheap price point for Tellez, but that's with good reason. And so much so that I don't think so right now. So I agree with you. Until he signs, I think we kind of park him off to the side, and we'll revisit if and when he signs. Let's talk prospect Jack Caglianone from Florida, now going to be a Kansas City Royal. This guy had some two-way vibes to him. I don't think we were ever thinking that he was going to be a two-way major leaguer, because he wasn't a great pitcher in college. What you like is the pure power from this guy. He ripped 33 homers in 71 games in 2023, and then 35 last year in 66 games. This guy was a monster with the bat, and he hit the ground decently as a pro player. He had 7 homers in his 226 plate appearances, split across High A and the Arizona Fall League. And that's where he hit 5 of the 7 homers, was the Fall League in 100 plate appearances. He's not going to break camp or anything, so he's like a summer type guy. But I'm curious if you're intrigued by Jack Caglianone as a summer call-up.
I mean, if he is absolutely crushing the ball in AAA, I think he starts the year in AA.
Yes.
I could see him, and the Royals are competing, and we expect them to compete for that division in a playoff spot, because that's where they were last year, right? So And I think this team is just going to get better and better. That being said, like, what is the incentive for Kansas City to call him up and start his clock mid-season? I think there's a much better chance
success. Like, if he's good, like
and that's what I mean.
They want to be good.
Like, he has to be crushing the ball in AAA.
A spot would also have to open though right now, because our boy Vinny P, who I know we talked down a little bit based on his price point versus some others, is taking up first base. And recent acquisition Jonathan India is going to be the everyday DH as long as he's healthy.
And they also have like Sal Perez, who's going to be
they want to get some DH
and stuff on his day off, and like, I just don't see a spot for him unless there's an injury and he's crushing the ball. I think he is a 2026 guy, and I would not be drafting him.
Yeah, I'm not drafting Jack Caglianone anywhere either. He's only gone in 11 of these 43 drafts that are in this sample, so I don't want to pretend that like people are making, grave mistake and just drafting him all over the place. But I don't even think those 11 folks that drafted him, I don't really see it. Because it's summer at the earliest. You need an injury or two, and it's just too many if. So I can't get there.
And Brett makes a good point. Like, Kansas City has to be winning and dealing with
like,
are they going to be winning if they're dealing with injuries? So like,
right. So I can't get there.
It is such a low percentage point. Now 2026, pencil him in. Like, this is the guy you want to try to go acquire in dynasty and keeper leagues. I get it, but in terms of redraft, like, no, he's not. He's not even. I'm not even doing a projection on him for this year.
No, I don't think you should.
I don't think there's any way he's making the majors, in an impactful way.
O'Hearn, I made a brief mention of, still in Baltimore, still lurking. As the strong side DH, ripped 15 bombs last year, 14 the year before. Now the 14 the year before I think caught some attention because it was in a much smaller sample. He had a 191 ISO, 14 homers and 368 plate appearances. Last year he got 494 plate appearances and added 1 homer to the mix, up to 15, as his ISO dropped from 191 to 163. O'Hearn will be 31. We know he's a platoon guy for sure. Do you have any interest in Ryan O'Hearn in Baltimore for another year?
You want to hear something really, really funny?
Of course I do.
Ryan O'Hearn is making the fourth largest amount on this team this year.
That is funny.
And only surpassed by Cedric Mullins, because Cedric Mullins and the Orioles, agreed on ARB terms yesterday at 8.7. This is a cheap team. Like, this is an unreal cheap team. But if Ryan O'Hearn is making $8 million, and that was on a team option, right? Like, they exercise it. I think Ryan O'Hearn's playing. Like, he's a strong side platoon, but I don't think Ryan O'Hearn's losing his job anytime soon, unless he just completely falls off the mat. So in leagues where a strong side platoon makes sense, I get it. I've never been a big Ryan O'Hearn fan. There just isn't enough pop in that bet, but it's a good average. It's, mid-teens homers, somewhere between 14 and 16 home runs. If that's something that interests you, fine. To me, like, outside of DCs, I just don't care.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I will say the NFBC isn't daily moves, but it's close with the 2 moves where you can do Monday through Thursday, and then you can do the weekend. And so because he is a platoon guy, that certainly helps. And I'm only going to draft O'Hearn in spots where I can at least make those kinds of changes, if not daily. If it's a weekly situation, I think it's too much of a hassle.
He's still going ahead of Josh Bell. He's still going ahead of Carlos Santana. Still going, like, is he any different than Lamont Wade Jr.? No,
and Lamont Wade Jr. is 464. Why?
Yeah.
Did you guys kill him out there or something? I don't get it. I love late night Lamont. But that's the thing. It comes down to price point again, and it's just not getting there for me with O'Hearn. He's fine. I'm not gonna clown people for taking him at that price. Like, it's whatever. But I got many more players that I'm interested in that go after O'Hearn by a substantial point. Not just Wade going 100+ picks later, but like you said, Santana, Torque, Wade. Hell, I would take even Justin Turner.
I was literally gonna say that. Like I would take Justin Turner over him, and like
until he is out of the league, I'm gonna trust that Justin Turner's gonna roll
our
out of
boy
bed.
Mark Canna is going 7-22.
Yes.
Like Canna's gonna end up somewhere, right? Like
yes, absolutely.
You know.
So no, I'm absolutely with you on that, and that's why O'Hearn just won't be on any of my teams. Probably not. Maybe he'll fall, But let's go to Tyler Soderstrom, former catcher who was never going to be a catcher because we knew from day one that he was a wretched catcher, but he can swing it, and he did put up a nice little 114 OPS plus in 61 games last year with 9 homers. He's going to be 23, and I think they're going to turn him loose a bit this year with the Athletics. How do we feel about Soderstrom? He no longer has catcher eligibility, at least not in the main event landscape. I don't know if there's any league type where he would, because he caught 1 game last year, so I highly, highly doubt it. But maybe. Do you like him as a first base DH type, Tyler Soderstrom with the Athletics? No city. Don't you dare say a city with them.
Soderstrom is the dude in this team, right? Like he has unreal power in the bat. He needs to raise the launch angle. He was like a sub 10-degree launch angle guy, but this was when I said earlier when I was talking about Toglia, and I was like, oh, he's got 84% or 84% zone contact. This is who I was actually thinking of when I was trying to do it off the top of my head, because I wrote about Soderstrom last night. This is easily my favorite dude in this tier. I think there is massive breakout potential. And I think the floor is a lot safer than we thought it was going to be with Soderstrom when he came up. We thought,
oh, really? Because I was gonna point out the floor, because isn't he a threat to hit my weight?
I mean, I think anybody who's as young as him is, but sure. I don't actually. I mean, you look at what he did last year. He hit 233, but the XBA was 240. Zone contact was 84%. Doesn't swing outside of the zone. Swing strike rate was 13.7%. Like if you double that, like that's 26-27% strikeout rate.
Sure.
Like that's totally fine with a guy who like legit has 70 grade power in that bat. Now, is it 70 game raw or 70 game power? I think it's still raw power that he hasn't translated that to being a guy who could hit the 30-40 home runs because of that launch angle. But he corrects that launch angle. He's moving to a much better park. I think there is a reasonable outcome where Soderstrom hits 40 home runs, like an 80th percentile outcome. Now I'm not going to project him for that, but I do think he plays full time with the A's. It is going to be a better park. We don't know how much better quite yet, but I think it is going to be a much better park than Oakland was in Sacramento. I think like my projection on Soderstrom is like 27 home runs and like a 240 batting average. Like I'll take That's that hot. At this point in the draft all day. And like I said, I think there is a lot of upside where like, hey, if he hit 245 with 40 bombs, I would not be surprised.
I can't disagree with any of that. I like your Tyler Soderstrom hype. And yeah, there is some risk, sure. But again, I'm always quick to point out when things are kind of baked into the price point, and at pick 300, I think you can take on the risk of Soderstrom because you can get 30 homers, and I do think 40 is a stretch possibility. Again, we're not projecting him for that. We're not saying 40 bombs. But if Steamer's already given him 26 in 128 games, we're not that far away from a potential 40 breakout, especially if this park, this Sutter Home Park, if it plays super well, then watch out. So I'm with you. I share in your love. Sutter Home. Excuse me. Sutter Home.
We've been talking a lot about some of these guys in this tier, and I go, well, you've got this guy below, you got this guy below. There's no one below Soderstrom that I want over Soderstrom. Like he is the kind of demarcation point of like the last guy at this position where I feel really good about.
Yeah, I'm okay with that at that pick because we did talk about so many guys that were in the same pick range as him that we liked better. But Soderstrom's your fave at 300, so you're not going to take the Bells and the Torkelsons and the Santanas after. You take Soderstrom, and then maybe you follow up with one of those guys later. But I'm with you too. I think you've sold me. I already had some intrigue in him, and then your excitement here. And what really got me was I didn't realize it was only a 25% K rate. I can live with that. That's really not
even if it jumps up to 27-28%, like I think that's fine for a guy like Soderstrom.
Yeah, I'm with you. So good call out on Tyler Soderstrom for the Athletics. And our last guy on my list, and again, if there's anybody you want to just give a passing mention to, we can do that too. But it's Davison de los Santos. If you'll remember, he was Rule 5 last year, going to Cleveland. And I was like, dang, why are they doing that when they've got Josh Naylor and Kyle Manzardo? Well, turns out we were kind of right about that. They sent him back. And so he was with Arizona. They got rid. Did they trade him or waive him? I can't remember. How did he get to Miami?
I think there was a trade.
Okay. So then he goes, now he's in Miami, which, hey, it's tougher park, sure. But this guy's got big time pop. And they put him on the 40 man in Miami. Is it time for Davison de los Santos to explode with the Marlins?
I mean, I think they should give him the opportunity. I mean, this is
Right.
one of those guys. I mean, he hit 40 home runs in the minors last year.
Yeah.
Like,
he got crazy pop.
Yeah, he's got just a ton of pop. I think a lot of it's going to come down to like, hey, does the hit tool play at the major league level? Because this has like a lot of the makings of Chris Carter, my boy, who I love and got 40 home runs from, and then 2 years later was out of the leagues, right?
He was out of the league, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there is just a ton of pop, and this is a really fun gamble, and there's no reason for the Marlins to not give him an opportunity, except for the fact it's the Marlins, and we just don't know what the hell they're going to do.
True.
But like, this is a guy to watch in spring training, because if De Los Santos goes out and hits like 8 spring training bombs, I think he's on this team. And like, poor fucking Matt Mervis, who was traded over there. Like, wouldn't it just be hilarious? He just gets blocked by a younger guy. But
the only thing that helps him is Mervis is lefty, De Los Santos is righty, so they could feasibly make it a platoon. But Davison de los Santos has enough power to just play every day.
And let's be honest, they don't need Jonah Bride like playing.
That's a fair point too. Yes,
like they could bring both these guys up and be fine. But you know, like,
in fairness to Jonah Bride, he was very good in 71 games last year. Just want to get that out there. But he's 29.
Jonah Bride also can play other positions.
Like, exactly. Push him around the diamond and let De Los Santos and Mervis try to clip like 60 combined homers.
If you're the Marlins and you're going, we know this guy's going to be up at some point, right? Why not just have him up opening day and try to see if he can get Rookie of the Year points towards draft picks, right? Like, I think De Los Santos is a really fun gamble, especially in leagues where you can drop him, right? Like, I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about De Los Santos in draft champions, and I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but I actually kind of prefer him in 12 and 15 team mixers where you can drop him if he doesn't make the team. Because like, I think there is a really good shot he does make the team. And if he doesn't, you go pick someone else up or you stash him until he's up. But I really like De Los Santos as kind of just hey, this is a literal lottery ticket, shot in the dark. I'm going to take the gamble here. And there's a crap ton of upside with homers.
Yeah, I've been tracking him now for a couple of years. I'm really eager to see what he can do. I hope he gets an opportunity. And even though the Marlins are goofy, sometimes they're kind of like Colorado Rockies East in some ways.
Yeah.
I am still intrigued enough that at pick 400, I'll probably have a Davison de los Santos share or two, because I still plan to do a couple of DCs. I had said I wasn't going to do any until the year turned over. Hey, it's January 17th, so I am free game. So if you join one, hit me up, Justin.
I'm trying not to play.
I know you're behaving. I'm just saying. I was telling everyone no.
Join one, let me
tell
know,
you, okay.
And maybe I'll be,
I think Greg and I are gonna do another one, and then I might do a solo. So when I get those sorted, I'll let you know so we can.
Because otherwise, I don't know if. Oh no, we'll have the sleeper in the bus listener.
Yes.
Together. But
yes.
Other than that, like, we won't have any leagues together this year.
We should get into a DC together then. I'm with that. All right. As you scan the list, actually, there is a guy I'm gonna add. Wait, hang on. Maybe he got hurt, and that's why he's going so low. Oh, yeah, never mind. David Fry, UCL surgery. So, yeah, that's why he's so... Anybody that we didn't list that you want to give a passing mention to?
I mean, should we talk more about Lamont Wade Jr., or, like, should we just, like, say, hey, we like Lamont Wade Jr.? Like,
you know what? We'll just tell you.
The price. Like,
we love him. He's dirt cheap, and he cooks righties, and your Giants are going to play him. Now, health is a bit of an issue, but any flaws you have with him are completely baked into the price. So, yes, I'm in on Lamont Wade Jr. He's just churning out, nice 2-WAR type seasons. he's 120 OPS plus the last 2 years. I'll take that.
We mentioned Justin Turner. Like, I think he's going to land somewhere. I just don't know where. A lot of people drafting Nick Kurtz. I don't know why. Like, he was part of the MILB draft this last year. I don't think he's going to be up that fast. I know he's an advanced hitter.
Seems aggressive, right?
But there's no reason to draft Nick Kurtz in a redraft league this year. So please just stop doing that.
Now, just to keep you honest, how much of that is because of your love with Soderstrom? That you don't want him to come up and create issues.
I just don't think he's going to advance that.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I just wanted
on an A's team. Why would they start his clock halfway through the season?
But even where would they start it? Right? It's not even so much that I think they have to keep him down or anything. He did go to the AFL, right? So that once you go to the AFL, you could get called up kind of any moment. But where would he play? Our boy Soderstrom at first base, Brent Rooker at DH. That's on lock. So where's he playing?
Kurtz would just have to be crushing the ball in AAA, and I just don't even know that he's going to start there. I think he's going to start in AA. So
no, I'm completely with that. I don't think I think he's like Jack Caglione. Why are you drafting him?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Not that I can really see.
I'll give a quick little hat tip, and I don't know that he's gonna be able to do it again this year because the PT might not be there unless injuries strike again. But I got some pretty good weeks out of Juan Yepez. You put up a 113 WRC plus in 249 plate appearances.
I was thinking him, but with the signing of Bell and the trade of Nathaniel Lowe, I don't see the spot for him.
No, and that's why I don't even. That's why it's a passing mention. Could be a DC play at most, but I think Bell is what really complicates it because the Nathaniel Lowe trade, sure, but that's a lefty. Now you bring in switch hitter Bell, and so now first and DH are covered. He's really only going to get in for injuries. But again, if something does crop up, he's a capable batter that you can put in. So if one or both of Lowe and Bell ended up getting hurt and they did put Yepez in, I would say pick him up as a midseason pickup, but you don't need to draft him.
Yeah, one guy I will mention, I don't know that he's even going to be on the team to start the season, but just to kind of keep an eye on. We did see Tyler Locklear make a debut last year, and he was really, really good in the minors in 2024. Hit 272, 382, 468 with 16 home runs and 9 stolen bases. And while I think we both like Luke Raley, we also mentioned a lot of flaws with Luke Raley.
Yes, we
did.
did.
And if those flaws become really, really prevalent early on in the season, I could see Tyler Locklear getting a shot and actually racking up 500 plate appearances. So I do think that he starts the year in the minors unless something happens to Raley, an injury. But Raley has enough downside that Locklear could be the solution if he really struggles.
Yes, that's a good call out, and I like Tyler Locklear as well. I'll give a passing mention to Ty France. He's unsigned right now, but did you see the note? This is from back in November now, that he was willing to play catcher. He hasn't played catcher in the majors, but he's been an emergency catcher for a while. He played a little bit at the alternate side in 2020, and he's telling teams hey, if you need me to be the backup or whatever, I could do that. Apparently he's got some free agent interest, but this was back in November and it's been a month and a half and he still hasn't signed. So we'll see what happens. Obviously health has been an issue with Ty France, but if he lands somewhere cool, I could be interested. When he went out to Cincy, I was at least add some intrigue, and he didn't do anything. He had an 85 OPS plus out there. So again, it's something where if he signs in the right spot.
This has the feeling though of a guy who signs a minor league deal with an invite to spring, so they can kind of teach him the position, though, which probably would mean he's more of a pickup in season than he's a draft guy.
That's totally fair. And we did mention this guy too earlier in the Lamont Wade situation, but Mark Canha, when he lands,
he's going to land somewhere
in him. Let me check one guy here. I want to see if he was just drafted or if he was drafted 2 years ago, because I'm a fan. Oh no, he's drafted. No, 2 years ago, 2023. I'm a fan of Trey Morgan for Tampa Bay. LSU product, kind of a unique profile for first base in that he doesn't have a ton of power. To wit, he only hit 10 homers in 100 games, but he stole 20 bases and he hit 324. So it is kind of it's a unique profile, and he has some outfield to him. So if they brought him up and let him play some outfield to get that eligibility going, he has first base eligibility. But Trey Morgan is somebody I really like, and the Rays, we know that when somebody's ready and they think that he can contribute, they'll bring him up. Well, maybe not always. They left Desmond Jennings in like 7 years too long. But I think that they wouldn't be afraid to bring Trey Morgan up, another guy who went to the AFL, first base outfield. Could be interesting. Now, again, does not deliver prototypical first base power. So if you don't like that, maybe he's not for you. But he could gain outfield eligibility. And then if you're talking about, modest low double-digit power with real speed and real batting, real hit tool, that's where the intrigue comes from for me with Trey Morgan.
Brett just says he's Evan White 2.0. Brett may know more than I do about Trey Morgan because I don't know a ton. I will say that the Rays,
great way to put it. And 2.0 is generally better. So he could be the better version of Evan White. Although Justin in his softball league was better than Evan White. So
yeah, that's true.
It's not saying a whole lot.
Yeah, because Evan White was a really good defender. I mean, I will say this. The Rays do like this kind of profile at first base for some reason. Guys that don't have massive
that don't have any power.
But can make a lot of contact. And, the speed is an interesting addition that you're not used to getting from first base. That being said, he only had 91 plate appearances at Double-A. I know he went to the Arizona Fall League, but I don't think there's any way he's making the roster to start the year. And I just don't know that I care enough about this profile to even put him on a DC roster. I think this is more of hey, put him on your watch list in deeper leagues and see maybe if he starts making some hay at AAA to start the year that he could be up.
That's exactly where I'm at too. I like Trey Morgan, but again, you don't have to draft him. See what happens if the playing time opens. I just want his name to be in y'all's heads so that if he is a summer call, if you say, "Oh, Sporer and Justin talked about him, and they had some intrigue with him." So yeah, that's where I'm at too.
So there are a lot of teams like the Orioles. I think are a really good example of a team like that. They don't have a lot of guys that are vets with options, right? So which kind of stops some of these younger guys like Mayo from potentially coming up.
That's right.
The Rays are the opposite. The Rays are going to be really frustrating, even more frustrating, I think,
than normal.
They usually are, because everybody's got options. So all these guys could be up, down, and
and they will be because that's how they play.
Unless it's an elite prospect, and I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Caminero.
Yeah, Caminero is going to be up. He's not going down, but. I don't know if there's an elite guy in the high minors for the Rays right now. Do not go out and spend a crap ton of money on any Ray. In Fab. These are guys that could be up, could be down, could be up, could be down. It can be really, really frustrating all season.
Fully agree. They'll get chances maybe, and you might put a token bid, but yeah, don't. It's gonna be rare that a Ray free agent prospect is the pickup of the week, just because they rarely commit to those guys right away because they like to play 34 guys across their 26-man roster with the up and down train to AAA. So all right, anybody else, or are you wrapping up? I guess we didn't really mention Rizzo or LeMahieu.
LeMahieu's gonna play
you can do worse at pick 660, right? He could be perhaps your last DC pick, and I actually would be okay with that.
I picked up LeMahieu in my 30-team league with 100-man rosters. One, because I'm rebuilding and I don't care how bad my team is, but I just need volume to not get penalized on my draft picks, right? Because we have innings and plate appearance limits, right? So I think he's going to play a good amount. As long as LeMahieu's healthy, I'm pretty sure he's going to get 450 plate appearances this year. They're not going to be anything other than just straight volume, but who were you talking about earlier in the episode that is on a bad team? Oh, Andrew Vaughn. If LeMahieu and Andrew Vaughn have the same amount of runs scored this year, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah, I don't think
I still think Andrew Vaughn is a much better player.
Sure.
And I'd rather draft him, but at the price in a DC,
because LeMahieu can do it in much fewer plate appearances as a Yankee versus Vaughn having to do it in the full year. Yeah,
LeMahieu is going to pick 724.
That is
third base eligible. He's going to play. He's
36 and he sucks.
Guy. Yeah.
But he is going to play if he's healthy. You can do worse for your literal last pick of a DC. That's all. That's all we're saying on that. No, nothing more, nothing less. If he comes in the spring looking hot, maybe I will up my interest. But right now it's passing interest.
Like Brett's making the point right now. Like he could be their at worst weak side platoon third baseman, or he could just be their everyday third baseman.
Right, because who else? Well, Jazz was there. Who's?
Well, I think they're moving Jazz back to second, and Oswald Cabrera is going to be.
There you go.
Or LeMahieu could play second every day. Like if they keep Jazz at third, unless they bring someone else in, which they could do. It's the Yankees,
they could,
right?
They could.
Is Oswald Cabrera the dude that they're really going to run out there every day? I don't think
so.
They
should. I love Oswald, though. I still love him.
But, I don't know that they're going to.
No, I don't think so either. So we'll see how that goes.
They're still paying DJ LeMahieu for another 2 seasons at $15 million a season.
And I will say this. Normally, I would push back on you and say, well, the Yankees don't care about that. But the financially prudent Yankees who don't want to spend any excess money and they're going to want to get the most out of all their money, I think they will they will fall for the sunk cost fallacy and try to milk everything they can out of DJ LeMahieu, even though you got to pay him anyway. Stop throwing good money after bad, or stop throwing good plate appearances after bad, by giving those to Oswaldo Cabrera, who I do love. So that'd be nice if he got the job, but we'll see. Okay, I think that's it on my front for first base. You got anybody else?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. I will say this guy, because I think he signed somewhere recently. Didn't Bobby Dahlbeck just with the White Sox?
Could be an everyday player for them.
Do you have any interest there as well? Okay, I just making sure.
I mean,
just because the playing time opened up. That's all.
Yeah, if I'm drafting a White Sox, it's because I actually really like them, or potentially could really like them as a player. Because if I don't like them and they're on the White Sox, that's just too many red flags.
I completely agree. It has to be somebody like Luis Robert Jr. who could just rise above being a White Sox, or my undying love for Miguel Vargas. I'm giving him one more shot, Justin. I know. But I'm with you. If I don't like them and they're on a bad team, you just can't get there. All right, that puts the bow on our first base preview. Brett, thank you so much for the commentary. It was very nice there in the chat. Justin, good luck tomorrow. All right, our two teams tangling. This is cool. Obviously, I want to beat you badly, but good luck. I hope it's fun. I'm sure the three of us will be blowing up the chat that we have.
If you guys beat us, I'll be rooting for you the rest of the way.
Me too. Same, 100%. If the commies take us down, then I am a Commanders fan at that point, because you guys do have some players that I really like.
Yeah,
Jaden's
it's gonna be
so dang fun. Scary Terry, despite going to OSU, has been one of my faves since he joined the league. So yeah, if you guys were to take us down, I would join your bandwagon, and you're very welcome on ours if we are able to beat y'all. So have a fun time watching the game tomorrow, and we will talk Sunday, come hell or high water.
There we go. Take it easy.
Peace.